What's up, movie fans?
Hey everyone.
This is the first time that we've had a guest on the channel in like over a year. This is the second return of Movie Friend. He's back. He was in 2 of my earlier videos, and now he's back in all of his Movie Friend glory.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back to rank Spider-Man.
Yes, we are ranking all 9 Spider-Man movies. There are not 11. I don't know where that number came from. So yeah, we're going to go through each of our rankings of all 9 Spider-Man movies. So let's just get into it. I think everybody has the same 9 at the very least. Number
Amazing Spider-Man
9, Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, this isn't a good movie.
I think that the movie has some good elements, but overall, it's just not a great movie. I think the good part of it is Peter and Gwen, and that's the only good part. Their relationship, I think, has some great elements in it. I think that Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone just overall have really great chemistry with each other.
I believe they were dating at the time in real life, too. So,
like, they're great together, but everything else about the movie,
it's just awful. It's not good.
The villains,
would you even consider them villains? They're just kind of there. They don't really have anything to do. You waste an actor like Jamie Foxx to play insecure Max Dillon, who just wasn't funny. None of his scenes really made me happy, like mad. And you waste an amazing actor, Dane DeHaan, playing an awful, just terrible Green Goblin. That was awful. Just an awful interpretation.
I like how he only really plays Green Goblin for like 5 seconds of the whole movie, and yet just hearing his laugh, I'm just like, no, he's not Green Goblin.
I'm gonna say my 2 things I love. 1, this movie has that suit.
That suit is really good. That's one of the best.
Thankfully,
suits.
It was finally in a good movie.
Yeah.
No Way Home. And, of course, the only good thing is Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield's performance in this movie. He's one of the only bright spots for those 2 movies. And I like the first movie. I like Amazing Spider-Man 1.
We'll get to that at some point.
But man, did he have such a crap script to have to perform in. I think we can all remember that one scene, For You, that Vivo music video.
Speaking of that plot line, that brings up my biggest problem with this whole movie.
So useless. We didn't need that subplot.
Yeah.
That opening scene with the dad and mom.
It feels
Richard
like
and
it's a
Mary
different
Potter.
movie. My biggest problem with the whole movie is that entire subplot also betrays who Spider-Man is by having it that Peter was the only person in existence who could have become Spider-Man.
Which destroys the whole thing of anyone could have got bit.
Yeah,
And
so
we're all Spider-Man.
I'm gonna try and keep this brief for the most part. So
there's one more thing. The CGI for the web slinging is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's...
Sony's VFX at the time were top A. Like, compared to how terrible the MCU CGI is now,
I kind of have disagreements with that. But...
This was grade A. Like, the way they made his fabric look like it was actually flowing.
Yeah.
The opening swinging scene was great. I'll give it that. Also, Hans Zimmer's Amazing Spider-Man 2 score was great too.
Yeah.
I'll give it that, definitely.
So moving on, number 8, we have the same 8 to
Spider-Man 3.
Spider-Man 3. This is probably one of the few parts on this list where we're actually going to have the same movies.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 3, I actually kind of have a love-hate relationship with this movie. Or not love-hate, but like-hate. I think the most recent time I watched it is the first time I've watched this movie, and I've really been like, yeah, I'm not sure if I like this that much.
Yeah, I do think there are some good parts about the movie.
There
like, some parts of the Sandman. Like, I liked Sandman's stuff with his daughter.
Yeah, that was good.
But of course, that's only for like 2 minutes of the movie and isn't at all mentioned again.
And a lot of the stuff that they do with retconning Uncle Ben's death.
I
with
actually
him.
think that's fine. I like Peter Parker. I like Pete finally moving on from
the
Uncle
funny
Ben and forgiving the man that killed him.
the funny thing is I liked that the previous times I've watched this movie, but the most recent time there was something about it that just didn't sit right with me. I think that's kind of a plot line that I go back and forth on. Most of the stuff that he does with the symbiote is actually kind of stuff that you would expect him to do.
Except for the scene. I don't think we
the
even need
scene.
to talk about it. Yeah, we don't need to talk about it. I remember a couple months ago, I shared to you a video of the commentary track for it, and they were talking about it and defending the scene, which I'm just like,
Can you really though?
I think I know Sam was trying to go for what Spider-Man think when he had the symbiote, what Peter thinks a cool guy would be. Like what what Peter Parker thinks a cool person is, even though that's a cool idea. But every scene with it wasn't. It made him look like a loser even more. Like,
Yeah.
there's the other scene with Gwen in the
Oh my gosh, that one.
this one is for you scene. Yeah, that wasn't good.
Yeah, there's so many elements about this movie where I'm like, I kind of like that, but then there's something that they do with it that ruins it. Like Harry, I kind of like what they do with him. Then they give him amnesia for 30% of the movie,
And then find out he never actually even had it.
and then
Or he had it
after
and then remembered.
he remembers everything, he decides to break up Peter and MJ because that's a good plan.
I'll actually say not all this is on Sam Raimi. A lot of this is
Yes.
Avi Arad for destroying the movie.
Yeah, that's been
And
well documented.
That's everyone knows.
Yeah.
The movie was completely different. It was going to be much more serious, and
I wish he would have gotten to do that.
the one thing though is the CGI in that movie was not good.
Oh yeah,
Except
that's
for I
another
think the
thing.
scene where he saves Gwen Stacy. That scene was good
That's
because of
alright.
I like it because it has the heartbeats of him. It's getting worse and worse, like faster. Which is weird that it's so bad because then the year after Iron Man came out, and the CGI in that movie, that was groundbreaking at the
Yeah.
time. How Tony's armor shifted and stuff. Incredible how the CGI went from that bad in Spider-Man 3 to that good.
Number 7. I think we have different number 7s. So
Mine is Far From Home.
yeah, so mine is The Amazing Spider-Man. Let's talk about Far From Home first.
There are good things in Far From Home. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. This is in the okay territory. But there are so many things they could have done that they didn't do. I have nitpicks with this movie, and I have genuine problems.
I think one thing that people have pointed out is that the MCU Spider-Man trilogy kind of takes on a whole new meaning if you interpret it as an longer version of Spider-Man's origin story, where in each movie he starts out as Spider-Man, but he's not really the Spider-Man that we know yet. And in every movie, he gets a new element and moral of Spider-Man added to him.
I think is, many people have said it, and this is a very unpopular opinion, is the Russo's fault. Because John Watts in Spider-Man Homecoming, okay, no, we'll talk about that, but he had to redo the whole thing he learned from Homecoming in this movie because of after Infinity War.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of true.
One bright spot is, I think Jake Gyllenhaal's great as Mysterio.
Yeah, Mysterio's a pretty good villain.
He's pretty good. I know one big problem people have with all of them is they feel more like Iron Man villains because they're out for Tony.
Yeah, that's...
And I'll even say that's a big problem. But he does so good at he's just great as Mysterio. It was great casting. I love how he's not actually wearing a Mysterio costume. It's just a motion capture.
Yeah, that's kind of cool, the way that they reinterpreted a lot of, like, his comic book. I like how they kind of did that. I don't know, there's a lot of elements with this movie. I'm not entirely sure why some of it doesn't work for me, but this one isn't that much higher for me either. I'm just gonna say it. This one's my number 6.
Okay.
So it's one step above.
All right, let's talk about The Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah. The Amazing Spider-Man, I think, is a movie that has a lot of things about it that shouldn't work. But I think it works surprisingly well, all things considered, even though it's not that high up on my list. I think that there are a lot of things about the movie that I really like. Specifically, once again, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and his relationship with Gwen Stacy, I think
that's great.
is the highlight of both Amazing Spider-Man movies. Yeah. Lizard isn't a great villain.
It's just unfortunate.
His whole motivation is literally, I kind of just want to turn the whole city into lizards now, so let's do that.
Yeah. Next up for number 6 is Amazing Spider-Man for me.
Yeah, so we kind of just switched those two out.
Yeah. It's always been Amazing Spider-Man or Homecoming. I give Homecoming a little more, mostly because of the villain. This movie, it actually a couple years ago was my favorite.
Yeah, I remember that.
One thing I like that many people don't is I love that suit. I don't care what anyone says. The reason I like it and many others is he's a broke kid. He's using parts that he can buy. Like, his lenses aren't amazing lenses. It's just sunglasses.
That makes sense.
It makes sense for a broke 17-year-old, 16-year-old in high school to just find pieces on the internet to make a suit. Again, the CGI in this movie is great. I relate to Spider-Man a lot, and I relate to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man more than any other, because he's not really bullied. He's more just kind of likes to keep to himself, which I relate more to than being a giant geek like Tobey's was, even though Tom Holland never really got bullied. It was just Flash Thompson. But we'll talk about my problems with Flash Thompson soon. So I like this movie. I do think the Lizard sucks. James Horner's score for The Amazing Spider-Man is super underrated. His Spider-Man theme is my favorite out of all of them.
Wow.
The scene with the cranes, I think, probably top 10 Spider-Man moments.
Yeah, that's all right.
I find that scene great. So
I think it's good. I actually think we have the same number 5 now that I think about it. I think we both have Homecoming.
Yeah, I have Homecoming.
Okay, so first I'm going to start talking about what I think is the best element of this movie, and that is its villain.
Oh, yeah.
Vulture.
Michael Keaton is so good as the Vulture.
I'm going to be totally honest here. Until December of 2021, I think Vulture was probably my favorite Spider-Man movie villain.
He was so good.
Yeah, his motivation, Michael Keaton was obviously fantastic. There's a recent movie that came out that kind of ruined a lot of elements of him for me.
Yeah, we don't talk about Morbius. Morbius sweep, by the way, Morbius sweep. $10 more billion.
They gotta release it a third time. We were all busy during that.
Yeah, we were busy, man.
We were busy during the second time.
Come on, Sony.
It'll do better this time. Yeah, Vulture was a great villain in this movie. I also kind of like the fact Peter is, I think, a lot more realistic in terms of... I think he's a lot more realistic than the other two in terms of how competent he actually is as Spider-Man, because he loses every single battle and everything that he attempts to do except for the Washington Monument and the end of the movie. And if you really think about it, a 15-year-old kid trying to be a superhero, that probably would be the outcome.
I do have complaints about things, and I know it's a little weird. I don't like the scene where Tony takes away his suit, because I find it a very hypocritical scene in Tony Stark's character saying, you don't know a thing about responsibility, even though Tony was born into wealth. He had to deal with nothing until he got captured, and Peter was born into poverty. His parents died, his uncle died. And I know the scene is supposed to show Tony's hypocrisy, but I've never liked Spider-Man being into underlings. I like Spider-Man thinking everyone is a mutual, everyone is like him. That's my Spider-Man, and I'm happy we're finally going to get that in Spider-Man 4 and all those. That was my biggest complaint, is that he's like, oh my god, like, he's like, wow, everyone is like, if anything, my biggest thing with him is he never had any time with Captain America, who is his idol and hero.
That's a
For
problem
years
I have
in
with
the
MCU
comics.
Spider-Man.
And in his audition tape, he did scenes with Chris Evans. And it's,
Really?
Yeah, be cast as him. He did things with RDJ and Chris Evans, and it's just disappointing they never, I think,
Touched on that.
I think
at
they
all?
talked once, and yeah, it was cute. It was him, the scene of Queens, Brooklyn. I thought that was kind of adorable, but they
And that
never
wasn't
talked.
even in this movie.
Yeah, they never talked again, which disappointed me a lot because Spider-Man's a working class hero. He's poor. He's down on his luck a lot.
Yeah.
Tony Stark is the billionaire playboy, so it doesn't make sense for him to really think Tony as a mutual.
Yeah.
And that's why I like it in the comics. He thinks him as a mutual. He thinks everyone is. In this, he thinks Tony is like one above all and stuff, which is, I just didn't like it. I think Robert Downey Jr. was great in the movie for what he was in. That Iron Man suit's ugly, though. I don't care. It looks dumb.
Okay, so number 4, I definitely have a different number 4 than you.
This is where mine is very unpopular.
So, my number 4 is Spider-Man 1. His is...
Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
That is where, if anyone even watches this video, like many people do, people would probably be like,
I'm
why?
gonna say, Spider-Man 2 actually isn't that much higher for me on the list technically, but I really do think that Spider-Man 2 is a lot better to Spider-Man 1. But okay, let's start talking about Spider-Man 1.
Yeah.
First off, Spider-Man 1, I just think that this is a pretty great origin for Peter. Like, I think, honestly, this is probably the best live-action definitive origin for Peter.
Yeah. I still agree with that.
Its only real competition is The Amazing Spider-Man, and I don't think that's a definitive Spider-Man origin. There's a lot of elements about that one that's a bit...
That leans more into Ultimate Spider-Man from 2000.
Yeah.
Which is great. I recommend people read that. That's a great comic. Don't read any more of the Ultimate comics, because they're awful. Ultimate Spider-Man, though, it's good. That's a good story.
I've never read the Ultimate comics. He's told me a lot about them. They sound horrible to me. I don't know. I have one of them, so maybe one day I'll see.
And we can review the Ultimate comics, which will just be a 30-minute session of me talking why they suck, and why Ultimate Spider-Man's a masterpiece.
I also think Green Goblin is obviously fantastic in this movie. I think Willem Dafoe definitely topped himself in the other movie he plays Green Goblin
It's No Way Home. Everyone's seen it.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to be a bit vague here. But I still think that Green Goblin was pretty good here. I just think that there are a lot of elements with this movie where I don't really have a lot to say about it, but it is really good with how, like, this is Spider-Man's origin. Like, this feels like a definitive Spider-Man origin.
Now we have Spider-Man 2. I used to hate this movie. No reason why.
Really? I didn't know that.
I don't know why. I never hated it. Okay, hate's a bad word. I just disliked it. I used to think it was overrated. I thought it wasn't that great of a movie. I appreciate it now. I do think it's a great movie. And I understand why people love this movie. I understand it. This is a great movie. Sam Raimi is a genius. But there are some things, in my opinion, that I don't like that others do. My biggest thing that pushes it down for me is the awful Mary Jane subplot. It is so bad.
There are a lot of things in this movie that make Mary Jane seem so manipulative. Because she's trying to get Peter to admit that he has feelings for her, while she is actively engaged to another person. There are parts where I watch this movie and I'm just like, what is she what is she trying to obtain here? What is her end goal? Yeah. That was very poorly executed. But I think the thing about this movie that really works for me is Peter's arc of having to decide between, like, his Spider-Man life and his real life having huge conflict with each other, and him having to decide one of them. Yeah. And the whole, like, the theme about choice and all of that that happens. I really like that. that was really emotional, that really stuck with me.
There's great scenes in this movie that I feel like...
The train fight.
Oh, train fight's amazing. My biggest complaint with it is sometimes I can't take it seriously because of Tobey Maguire's face.
That's
The
fair.
whole emotion in it just goes away because you're laughing because he looks like he's constipated. One of my favorite scenes of the movie is when he's at Aunt May's house and she's moving. I love that scene about the whole,
Yeah,
the city needs a hero, because it's very hinted that
She knows.
I think practically she knows he's Spider-Man. All the times he's ran away, all that, she knows, and I love it. Just like how some people think Robbie Robinson knew that Peter was Spider-Man because of the way he holds onto the mask. But I feel like that scene gets ruined with the stupid scene of him falling and saying, "My back." It's so funny, but after that heart-to-heart scene of Aunt May and Spider-Man, that great scene, they do an MCU comedy moment where it's him like, "I'm back," and then he hurts his back. Get it? Get it? He's back! It's so stupid. It would have been great if you just took that out. And I understand that they wanted to make the hero scene him saving MJ, but everyone hates MJ in this movie. It doesn't seem like a hero
enough.
moment. I get it, but you could cut all of that out, and him saying, "I'm back," and then it's him getting back, and then it goes into J. Jonah talking about it, and then the newspaper, of course, says, "He's back."
Yeah,
That would have been great. Also, that whole MJ scene is so unnecessary in the cafe. It doesn't make her likable. The whole "kiss me,"
as
dude,
she's engaged.
you are getting married. Also,
You just talked about a few scenes ago how you can't get back with Peter because you're getting married, and now that's not your concern anymore.
the one scene where I like it where she misses Peter is the scene where she tells her fiance to do the upside down kiss, that's a
fine.
hint. That's a subtle hint of she misses him. She doesn't know. She is nostalgic for Spider-Man. That's a decent scene. Everything else just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, how are we... Alfred Molina. How do we...
how the heck did we forget about?
He's great.
Yeah,
I think we just say that. Alfred Molina's great in the movie.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, we could go on forever about Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
So let's just move on. My number 3 is Spider-Man 2, so it wasn't that much higher. Your number 3, I'm pretty sure, is different.
No Way Home.
Okay, so let's talk about No Way Home. That's my number 2. I'm just gonna say that, and your number 2's the first Spider-Man.
Yes.
So yeah,
I'll go into what I think about Spider-Man for a little.
Okay,
So No Way Home. I love this movie. This movie means a lot to me.
I'm just gonna let him talk about it because I literally just talked about this movie in my very last video. So if you want to see my thoughts on it, go to that video. I'm gonna let him talk.
Spider-Man No Way Home. This movie, again, means a lot to me and many Spider-Man fans. This is a movie that is a love letter to the character of Spider-Man and everything we love about him. Bringing back Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe, Thomas Hayden Church, all bringing all those characters back. Oh, and of course, bringing back Toby and Andrew was huge, even though, thanks Internet for spoiling it for yourself. You know how amazing that scene would have been if everyone just shut up. And I understand why some people don't like this movie. That's fine. That's your opinion. I love it. I think it's great. Biggest complaints are CGI looks pretty bad, but the movie was made during COVID, so of course CGI wasn't going to look good, and cinematography was iffy. Another complaint I have is some of the characters they didn't use well. Like, Flash Thompson is one of the most underused characters.
Yes.
The best interpretation of him was Amazing Spider-Man, and he was barely even in it. Flash Thompson's awesome because he used to hate Peter and love Spider-Man, but more and more Flash starts to come to respect Peter, and then he becomes close friends with him, which is I love. And they never did that. All they did with him is, I'm a friend of Peter, and this is the joke of my book. I don't like it. I wish they actually made him a main character.
Maybe they will in the future, but...
I feel like they completely underuse the Peter Parker being Spider-Man thing to just... he needs to get his friends and him into MIT, which
I actually very much disagree with that. I think they used that fantastically.
I didn't. The final
Fair
fight was awesome, everything, and we are finally getting Spider-Man in college by himself with a sewing machine just to fix his suit, and the suit looks great. I'm excited for it, and yeah, I'm excited for his future as Spider-Man.
So, you didn't really get to talk about Spider-Man 1,
Yeah.
so I guess we'll quickly...
Spider-Man 1 is my number 2. If we want to say Spider-Man 2 is a better film, it's better shot, it's better well made. But this movie has always had a special place in my heart. It was one of the first superhero movies I saw. It's what made me love Spider-Man. Everything was just great. I think Every Scene with Uncle Ben was amazing. It has probably one of my favorite lines in a movie with the whole, I had a father, his name was Ben Parker. I thought that line was so good. The final fight was great. Willem Dafoe, easily my favorite villain out of all of them. This is a great movie. I think that's simple. And number 1 for both of us,
Spider-Man
Into the Spider-Verse.
Spider-Verse.
I said Spider-Man No Way Home was a love letter to Spider-Man fans. This was a love letter to everyone that is a fan and the creators of Spider-Man. Steve Ditko and Stan Lee. This may be the best interpretation we have had of Spider-Man. Even if it's not even Peter Parker.
What they do with Peter, even if it's not about him, and his whole relationship with Miles, it's just, this movie is close to be, it might even be, in my opinion, a masterpiece in just how it managed to tie Peter and Miles' arcs together, how it managed to do all of that.
That leap of faith scene at the ending is so cool. Sure, the villain isn't great. Kingpin isn't.
Kingpin's fine.
He's fine, but that's like my only complaint with it. There are some details in the movie that I found out, like, I don't know if this one's true. I heard it from somewhere, and I hope it's true because that's so cool. Miles is animated in a different type of frame ratio than the other Spider-Men, but when he actually becomes Spider-Man, he's in the same fluid animation as they are. The show is kind of choppiness.
I did see this one shot. There's so many different animation details in this movie. This movie has some of the greatest animation I've ever seen. It's very creative.
Yeah.
One thing that I remember somebody pointed out in this one video is that in the scene where the other Spider-Man show up when Peter, Miles, and Gwen are in the little basement base that Spider-Man has, Peter and Gwen's spider sense goes off a split second, literally like 1 second before Miles, when they realize that the Spider-Men are there. There's just so many great animation details. The animation's one of the best elements of the movie.
I think one scene that I really like, though, my highlight scene, is when it's the final battle and Miles comes in, they're all saying Miles, and then Doc Ock doesn't know, and she just says, Spider-Man? Which I love, because it's like saying he is now 16 times Spider-Man. He's the ultimate Spider-Man. That movie is a masterpiece. I'm so happy it won an Oscar.
Yes.
Dethroned
it
Pixar.
Deserved it.
It dethroned Pixar.
That year it deserved it.
Yeah, it's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, go watch it.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good movie, and it has great music. Music in it is great.
Yep.
You could say it's amazing.
Or spectacular.
Or sensational.
We should probably stop.
I'm captured. I've been captured. Please help. He's a Morbius fan. He's captured me.
I actually haven't even seen Morbius, but I have been making fun of it a lot, even so, because I know it's gonna be a bad movie. That's our thoughts on all the Spider-Man movies. If you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe. You could leave a dislike, but you can't because YouTube sucks. Okay, anyway.
Alright.
See ya, movie fans.
Take care, everyone.